we have one of the more interesting topics today. This is probably the neatest nonprofit organization that I've ever heard about. It is called HouseN2Home. It's an Ann Arbor volunteer group helping homeless people turn a house into a home. And we have with us today Ginger Raymond, Peggy Farrell, and Ruth Ann Logue. And ladies, why don't you tell us about this organization? How did it start? And first of all, what's the purpose of your organization?
Our purpose is to create homes that families can thrive in. We help people come out of homelessness, and we work with people that have been in shelters. And we want to create homes that are functional, comfortable, inviting. And we use donated and sometimes new furniture if it's been given to us new, to help make this happen, to create a house that is a real home for people.
And why don't you explain the history of this organization, how it started, the community you serve? Who wants to answer that one?
Ruth Ann.
Yeah, they're all saying Ruth Ann. So it started very small with a group of my friends. We saw a need, and a young single mom in our community that was experiencing homelessness and was going to be transitioning out of a shelter. And though she was able to secure housing, we realized she was going to come out of shelter without anything. She had experienced homelessness as a young person and remembered how difficult it was to come out of a shelter and not have anything in the apartment that her family moved into. She said that sometimes they would be riding down the road and maybe there was a piece of furniture on the side of the road. And if someone was driving them and they had room in the car, maybe they'd stop and pick up that small piece of furniture. And so over the course of months and months, she said, we acquired a table and a couple of chairs, but we never got beds. We were all sleeping on the floor. And this really was seared into her memory as a young person. So here she is as a young adult with 3 small children, experiencing this again, and this trauma comes back up. So we got together, a small group of people, and furnished her home. So the day that she came out of the shelter, her home was furnished. A year later, her landlord was going to rent 2 houses to 2 women who are coming out of the domestic violence shelter here in Washtenaw County. And he called me and asked me, would you be willing to get your friends back together and, do the same thing? Both of these women have suffered a lot. They have children. They're moving into their homes and they need these services. So that was kind of born from that. And it took another year before we really became organized as HouseN2Home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, you started in what year?
The first house was 2017.
17.
We say that our official start for HouseN2Home when we brought Peggy on board, which added this huge injection of energy and focus and really helped us see that this was a mission we wanted to push forward. That was 2019. So actually yesterday was our 3-year anniversary of our as an organization called HouseN2Home.
Mm-hmm.
So explain what's your territory? What area do you cover?
Mm-hmm.
We cover Washtenaw County, and I would try to exclusively stay in Washtenaw County because that job is huge. There are so many people we need to help.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really aware of any other organizations that really do this in most communities. So why don't you talk about the challenges the first couple of years that you had?
The hardest part for us was we had no storage. So if we did find things for a potential client, we had nowhere to put it. And our homes became overrun with all the things our generous neighbors and people in the community were giving us. But that was almost, we were almost at the breaking point because there are only so many rooms in our homes, our basement, our garage, and that wasn't sustainable. So having St. Joe's donate storage space to us became our greatest asset, really.
So could you explain when did you move to St. Joe's? And for people not familiar with your organization, how much space do you have and what do you have in there?
We moved there in the summer of 2019, and I think we have maybe 15,000 square feet, and we have many rooms. It was used for memory care at St. Joe's for elderly adults, but then it was left vacant because they moved out. So this was prime real estate for St. Joe's. And Dave Raymond, who is the director of planning and design at St. Joe's, he talked to the president and the powers that be, and they offered to us this space, which we rent for $1 a year. So it was a game changer. Just opened up many opportunities for us.
Could you describe your individual roles and the fact that this isn't just three women together with a nonprofit? This is a big time complex organization.
It is. It's very complex. And one of the things that makes it both beautiful and somewhat more complex is that we are all volunteers. It is 100% volunteer run and led. So it's Peggy, Ginger, myself, and Liz Gadway make up the executive team. We each have a role. We have labels. I don't know that the labels accurately define what all we do, but I'm president, Ginger's vice president, Peggy is the treasurer, Liz is our secretary. But we also have well over 100 volunteers that, and we all do everything. So it is very complex. The first couple of years that we were functioning, we had applied for our nonprofit status, but we're waiting. Really, COVID put a real damper on that because the IRS was trying to send out stimulus checks, and they couldn't get to our paperwork. So we waited for quite a while for our nonprofit status, which we're less than a year old in terms of being a nonprofit. But that meant that for 2021, at the end of the season, we could appeal for some financial help, because prior to that, we'd gotten some smaller, gifts here and there, but it basically had been carried kind of by the four of us for a while. And that's just not sustainable given the numbers that we're now helping. So when we started in 2019, that March, the first day, which yesterday was our 3-year anniversary, that year we did 31 homes. So that's, 2019, 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, we did 132 homes. So we're talking about 100 more homes. And then 2021, which we just finished, we did 234. So another 100 more. So it's been crucial that getting our nonprofit status has been a total game changer, because we were able to appeal for financial contributions that will hopefully see us through the next year or two.
So what does 2022 look like?
I was running the numbers yet. This is kind of interesting. I think we're on day 77 or something in 2022, March 17th. And we've already done 62 62 moves this
Mhm.
year. So out of 74, 75 days, we've done 62 moves. Like our
Mhm.
numbers, they're, and I'm having conversations with our community partners, the powers that be at some of the partners in our community that work with homelessness, and I'm asking them questions like, are these numbers going to continue to rise? Is homelessness on the rise? And what I'm hearing is the homelessness numbers are pretty stable, but the housing, because of
Mhm.
some federal money that got injected into the programs all over this country, they're able to house people at a higher rate. So that's why the demand for our services has just greatly increased and will continue to increase through the fall, is the prediction of 2022.
So do you receive any governmental money?
No,
No.
we don't.
So 100% is private funding.
Hmm. Right.
And we do it private and also some corporate. We have gotten some in-kind donations from some corporate sponsors.
So I became aware of your organization because my daughter was a third-year law student at the University of Michigan, and her client came out of homelessness, and she got them housing, but the situation was they had absolutely no furniture whatsoever. And she heard about your organization, and my family was able to participate in one of your moves, and I was just shocked at how good the furniture was. I mean, this isn't a bunch of junk furniture. This is kind of like having a interior designer design the homeless people's new housing, and I think that really impressed me. I didn't think anything like that existed. Could you explain like that this is not just you're putting a bunch of old furniture in a room, that this is really, like your name says, turning a house into a home?
We think of this as we are helping furnish our kids' homes or our home. This is not just a stranger's home. This is something we would be proud or happy to live in, give to our children. We do not want this to look like we pulled it in off of the street. We want it to look like this is your home and you are special. I had a client yesterday who said to me, when she heard we were going to be doing her home, she went on our Instagram feed and spent days looking at all the homes. And she said, I can't tell you how excited I am. And I think we met her level of expectation, and I'm blown away. And that's our goal every single time.
How do you get a homeless family? Can they apply to you? So from a consumer perspective, if somebody needs your services, how do they approach you?
We receive referrals from many agencies in Washtenaw County, many of the shelters, and the caseworkers, case managers will fill out a referral for one of their clients, and then we receive it and we review it, and then we make a contact, talk with them before we talk with the client that we're sharing, that we're partnering with.
I would just say that caseworker has made a determination that client will benefit from our services, and that client has stable housing. So we don't do any part of the housing piece. It's just once they have stable housing, they can be referred to us for services. And then piggybacking off of what Peggy was saying, we then do a very thorough intake with that client. So Chuck, in the example that you're mentioning with your daughter and the client we were helping, I spent a good hour and a half on the phone with that client because we had multiple bedrooms to furnish. There were children's rooms. I wanted to find out, what did the kids like? What did mom and dad want in their room? What was she hoping that the family room, she had, smaller children, and she wanted a sofa where they could all sit together and watch a family movie. And so those are all questions that we ask, down to like, what's your favorite color? If you saw the pictures from Peggy's move yesterday, she's talking about this mom checking out our Instagram. Like, the daughter's room is all in primary colors, and she loves rainbows and unicorns, and those things show up. Ask those questions, because we, like you said before, this is not just your house, this is your home. And we want you to then be free to deal with the other barriers that you've had, so without having to worry about furnishing.
Right. What I was impressed at is it was almost like they were hiring an interior designer, and it makes logical sense. If you live in a place that you can be proud of, you're more likely to be successful and leave homelessness. And I'm assuming that's part of your belief system.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's say somebody's watching or listening to this, and they're a private individual, or they're a business or a corporation. How could they get involved? I mean, one of the things that I thought when I heard about your organization, instead of a corporation paying a bunch of money to somebody to build a team building exercise, it would seem that if a corporation would just adopt a family, do the move together, that would be a better team building event than doing something else.
I so agree. I don't know the details to all of this, but I know that Ford Motor Company, there were a group of gentlemen, I believe they were all men, who came and helped on a move. And I think they all thought it was one of the best experiences.
Yes.
They worked so hard. They carried all the heavy things. And when they were done, they all went out to lunch together. And I heard afterward, they all said that was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of companies and businesses would have that experience. It would change their life, I think.
Yeah. We've also had sports teams from EMU and U of M come, and interior design group from EMU came, and they have helped with the moves, loading, unloading, even helping set up the apartments. So it's exciting to see all these people come together.
So how should somebody contact you? What would be the best way? And let's say somebody wants to donate money. Let's say somebody wants to volunteer. Let's say somebody wants to get their corporation involved. How do they do that?
Our website is HouseN2, letter N, number 2, home.org. And on there are a couple of buttons that there's one for donations, for financial donations. There's also a button for donating furniture that generates an email to one of our volunteers who runs the furniture donation aspect of things. Then there's also another button that says contact us, and that generates an email that comes to me. So that email is contactus@houseand2home.org. And anyone who wanted to do a team building, anyone who just wants more information about how they could plug in and volunteer, they can send an email to that email address. There's also a button that's a separate button for volunteer. If somebody wanted to be more like, oh, I'd like to do this more regularly, there's a button that you can push that just generates a volunteer form. So lots of different ways to kind of on ramp there. So hope that answered your question.
And your moves, they're not just on the weekends, they're during the week too?
Yeah. They're every day, actually.
Every day.
We try to do 4 or 5 moves a week. So yeah, and fit a move in almost any day.
This week, we have 4 moves and about 30 people, volunteers involved in these moves, all told. So it takes a bunch of us to do this. Yeah.
So you're 3 years in. What's the vision for the next 5 years or so?
I'm really starting to think hard about that, as I've had some people approach me and talk to me about getting some grant money. There's some significant grant money out there for the work that we're doing. So, definitely, I think this executive team wants to see this continue for a really long time. And I know I want to see myself involved for a really long time. And so we are talking about how to make this work sustainable, because as Ginger just mentioned, 30 people working on 4 moves this week. We've had weeks where we've had 6 moves. So we need to grow. We need to grow our core group of volunteers, and we need some people who are interested in, kind of doing what we're doing, being leaders, and training leaders up so that we can pass it along eventually.
So if you want to volunteer, do you have to be over 18?
Well, no. Peggy's granddaughter started at 11 years old.
Almost 12. I think she was
almost 12. And she learned every step of the procedure of doing a move till she was actually leading a move last year, I believe. And she goes on many moves. She was on your move yesterday.
She was.
Brings her friends along.
Yes. They're so good now that they were able to, you can literally say, okay, you two go into the mom's room, put the bed together, set up the whole room, and hang the art. And they take their drill and the hammer and they do it. And it turned out beautiful.
Oh.
And it was all their idea where things went, how it went together. And that gives me such joy. You have no idea.
So what role does social media play in your organization?
We are more visible on social media. I'm doing this social media right now, and I'm getting emails or messages from people from social media, with things to donate, or I see that our social media post will get shared, so that spreads the word. I think I'd love for us to grow our social media. And that's just a process of people inviting and sharing. But I think it gets the word out. And as Peggy mentioned, it's a place where we can refer our clients. Like, go look at our social media, and you'll see the kind of work that we do. So that can be reassuring when they haven't had, coming out of homelessness and making that transition. You're coming from a place where you've had very little say in what is happening in your life. If you're living in a shelter, you're told this is where you're sleeping, this is what you're eating, this is your curfew. I'm not saying those things are necessarily wrong. It's limiting. And so when they're referred to HouseN2Home, we're giving them this chance to say, I'd love for my bedroom to be peaceful. I love blues and greens. My children love Marvel. You're getting to make some choices, and I think that's really important.
How important are your volunteers, and what percentage of your volunteers, are in more than one move?
Oh, I'd say the volunteers are the heartbeat of HouseN2Home. We have volunteers that not only are they passionate about what they do, but they're compassionate, and they are hardworking. Some of them are there every day of the week, pulling for a client, cleaning furniture, repairing. We have one gentleman that repairs and fixes broken furniture. He has an organized workshop there at HouseN2Home that he set up, and we rely on him to put wires on pictures if we don't know how to do that, and just a lot of projects. So there's many ways that the volunteers can get plugged in. We have some at home that, especially during COVID, they didn't want to get out, so they would make food, dinners, cookies. that we take to a move. Yeah, there's so many ways that the volunteers are working hard to make the move happen. They'll be pulling a team together. They might be a lead on a move, or they may just be an assistant, a helper, or a van driver, a sprinter driver. So there's many ways that they're busy bees at HouseN2Home.
What organizations do your clients come from?
We have about 17 agencies in Washtenaw County. Avalon Housing, Ozone House, Alpha House, Ann Arbor Public Schools, the VA Hospital, St. Joe Hospital, MAP,
Safe.
Safe House.
Safe House.
Mm-hmm. SOS. SOS.
Yep. Any agency that's attending to the needs of the homeless can refer to us, and I think almost all of them do.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I haven't asked you about that I think is important, could you share some of your success stories?
Oh, there's so many. They all are.
Yeah. I'm going to share this real quick because it's fresh on my mind. I had a call yesterday with a caseworker that we've worked with for several years from Avalon Housing. And he just shared with me that he got a brand new client on his caseload who had been assigned to another caseworker who transferred within agency, and so had to pass this client off to this new caseworker. And he said, I met with her for the first time last week, and she moved out of the shelter last July into her apartment. So I never know what I'm going to find when I come into an apartment where someone's been living, transitioning from homelessness that many months later. And I walked in and I looked around, and her apartment was absolutely beautiful and clean and well kept. And he said the first thing I asked her was, did HouseN2Home do your apartment? They did. And I love it. He said she was so proud of her space and has maintained it so well. All these months later, it still looks lovely because we listened to her. It was what she wanted. And she's still maintaining it. So I feel like that he didn't give me the client's name for confidentiality reasons, but I feel like that is quite a success story, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my understanding is you've had people that you've helped that have later become employed and then re-volunteered to help others in your organization.
Yes, this particular gentleman, he was homeless. He didn't have a transportation. He had no food. He didn't have a job. But the first stop was we helped him. Once the apartment was available for him, we helped him move in and set up his apartment. And soon after that, we learned that he had acquired a job, and then he was very motivated to save his money so that he could buy a car. And actually, HouseN2Home helped him with some of the ins and outs of acquiring the car, like getting to the Secretary of State, getting licensing, and his renewing his license, which had lapsed. So he has since had 2 or 3 different jobs, but he's currently employed, and he's just he's helped us on at least 2 or 3 moves. He would bring he brought another gentleman from where he lives, his apartment, to join in on the move, and they just were valuable with their strength, and it opened their eyes to helping others. They wanted to give back what they felt they had been given. So.
One thing that I was impressed with is everybody is inundated with charities asking to write a check. But with your situation, as a volunteer, you participate in it, you see an empty room, then you see everybody working together as a team, and then you see a result that is just absolutely amazing. And then seeing the look on the family's face, and it's tremendously better than their wildest expectations. It just seems like that had a lot more meaning than just writing a check. And I'm assuming that's why you guys do it.
Oh, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We all work incredibly long hours. Yesterday I think I did 11 hours just between all the meetings, and then trying to help the group and pull some things together. But it is what gets you coming. You come back day after day because you see it making a difference in someone's life.
Yeah. To see the tears and the reactions and the screams for joy when their apartment's revealed to them. It's just precious. You can't even describe it.
So I want to thank you for being with us today. Once again, I was amazed by this organization. I think that every community should try to steal their idea and look at them for mentorship.
Yes.
And my personal recommendation is, if you're looking for an organization to support or become involved with, that I can't think of anything better than HouseN2Home. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for the privilege.
Thank you for your support.
Appreciate it.